Hello everybody and welcome back to Review Crew. I'm Tim.
And I'm Laura, and today we're going to be reviewing the new Suicide Squad. Here's the trailer.
You gotta be kidding me. You're gonna risk the entire mission for a mental defective dressed as a court jester.
This coming from a guy that wears a toilet seat on his head.
We don't leave one of our own behind.
Hopefully Harley's still alive.
No funny business, Colonel. These are dangerous people.
Team 2 is clear to go.
Fire. 3, 2.
What are you guys doing?
What? We're here to save you.
You were gonna save me?
It was a really good plan, too.
Well, I can go back inside and you can still do it.
That's patronizing.
I'm so sorry. Harley Quinn.
Blood sport.
You know the deal. Successfully complete the mission, you get 10 years off your sentence. You fail to follow my orders in any way, and I detonate the explosive device in the base of your skull.
So this is the famous Suicide Squad.
Nom nom.
Any questions?
And
Yes, that is your hand. Very good.
we're all gonna die.
I hope so.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Here's the deal. We fail the mission, you die.
If we find out any information you give us is false, you die.
If we find out you have personalized license plates, you die.
What? No.
If you cough without covering your mouth.
Harley, although that isn't an open invitation for you to cough without covering your mouth.
What's the plan?
How the hell am I supposed to know?
You're the leader. You're supposed to be decisive.
And I've decided that you should eat a big bag of dicks.
If this whole beach was completely covered in dicks, and somebody said I'd eat every dick until the beach was clean for liberty, I would say no problemo.
Why would someone put penises all over the beach?
Who knows why madmen do what they do?
This is suicide.
Well, that's kind of our thing.
Don't you worry, eh? I'm gonna get you out of here alive.
I'm going to get you out of here alive.
Oh my God! We've got a freaking kaiju up in this shit!
Uh-huh.
We love the rain. It's like angels are splooching all over us.
So, Tim, first thoughts on the movie. What did you like? What did you not like? What was your overall experience?
Yeah, so going into it, I was already super excited for it because I knew James Gunn was directing, and I really appreciated his work on Marvel and other movies like that. So I had high hopes for it, and after coming out of it, I really liked it. I was, pleasantly. I wasn't surprised, but I had a good time. I enjoyed just how it really, kind of leaned into the fun comic book movie. It just didn't take itself very seriously at all. It had a good time. I just enjoyed all the characters. I honestly enjoyed the story of it. I enjoyed most of it. Like, there wasn't really anything that I was kind of that stuck out to me as bad or inconsistent with the rest of the film. Me and my friend just went to and it was one of the first movies I saw back in theaters. So that I think made it an even better experience for me, just seeing it on the big screen. And we came out afterward and we just talked about it all night. And I overall really enjoyed it. What about you?
Same here. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see it in a theater. I actually watched it on HBO Max, which they've taken it off, which is a very interesting strategy, in my opinion, with their release there. I really enjoyed it. Personally, I haven't watched many of the other films in the DC universe, mostly because sometimes with superhero movies, I feel like they can get really ungrounded and just, you can lose yourself in the fun of it. But I was actually very surprised how much I enjoyed the new Suicide Squad. The characters were really fun, and although it was super campy, I thought everything really went well with the theme of the movie, and the artistic direction they took it in was just absolutely beautiful.
Yes, I 100% agree. And like on that note, the color I think is a huge part of that movie. Like particularly, we were mentioning like the Harley Quinn scene. There's just so much like vibrant energy that comes with those scenes, especially with that character, and the colors just pop. And I think that was one of the things that made this movie so much better than its predecessor, the 2016 one, was the color and the artistic direction. Because this one, like I kind of said, just leaned into that, that campy energy and that comic book feel, and just made it feel like it was a page coming right onto the screen and just popping out with all this color and artistic value.
100%, and especially in those Harley Quinn scenes, she is such a violent and brutal character, but she's so lovable, and I think it's because when we see all of these colorful scenes, we're seeing the world through her eyes, this very like romanticized comic booky feel, and especially her little romp with the president there, as she's in the bird room with all the birds flying around, or when she's killing a bunch of people but flowers are going everywhere. I thought it was very interesting, and it was so fun to watch, to see that like dichotomy between what was a very violent and bloody film, but just so colorful and beautiful. I thought that direction was absolutely a pleasure to watch.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I mean, just that Harley Quinn character, like we said, is so energetic. And Margot Robbie, I really enjoyed seeing her. This is her, I think, third performance as the character. And she's just like come into her, like she did great in the first one, but she's just, like you can tell, she's developed so well with that character. And it's just, every time I think of Harley Quinn now, I think of Margot Robbie, which is awesome. And those characters overall in the film, I thought were a huge point. Did you have any favorites other than Harley?
Oh, of course, Harley had to be my favorite. I just love her energy in that. I feel like the character is almost designed to be this hypersexualized character, but her portrayal in all of these movies is very empowered and very, straightforward and aggressive. I also love Idris Elba's character. I thought he was just so fun. I love him in everything he's done. But as I mentioned, I'm not really into the DC universe as much, so there were a lot of characters that were very interesting to see. I also loved John Cena as Peacekeeper. I thought it was a very interesting emotional journey we saw him go through. When he's faced with killing the Colonel, we can see that his idea of peace is about this big picture as opposed to the individual. And I thought, although there were 3 macho masculine characters, they all had different motivations, and that was really interesting to see them play off of each other. What about you? Any other favorites?
Yeah, for me, I think I was leaving the theater and I was thinking, like, when I'm deciding whether my favorite character is John Cena's character or a guy called Polka Dot Man, I think the movie did something right. So yeah, Polka Dot Man was huge for me, and I really appreciated that because I looked into it a little bit afterwards because it's such a ridiculous character. And James Gunn, I think, literally went into that movie with the idea, who's the dumbest DC character from the comics and who can I put in this movie? And it ended up being Polka Dot Man. But honestly, he's a dumb character. The idea, the concept of a guy who throws polka dots at people. His emotional journey was one of my favorites. Like his relationship, his poor relationship with his mother, and how that kind of transgressed throughout the film. I really enjoyed that. And then also, of course, King Shark was so funny.
Yes.
Sylvester Stallone casting was perfect right there. I thought it was so funny, and I thought all the characters just worked so well together. That was such a great team. And yeah, I think those two, King Shark and Polka Dot Man, might be my 2 favorites.
I loved Polka Dot Man, and I thought the way he died very quickly at the end shows something that I was really impressed with. DC didn't shy away from killing characters off in the most obscene and meaningless ways possible, that I think because it doesn't take itself too seriously, it's able to do that. Like in Marvel movies, everything is a bit more dramatic, but I love that the DC played with that dark humor of death, especially in that opening sequence with the faux Suicide Squad. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that opening scene.
Yes, that opening scene, literally, I mean, it perfectly sets the tone for the rest of the movie, where you get this introduction of this big team of characters, and then 90% of them are killed off. I mean, it's just, and it's so funny, honestly, the way that, it's just that James Gunn is just having fun killing off these characters in these obscene ways. And yeah, I agree. I think you said, that the way that DC just kind of leans into it and makes it just, really embraces that aspect of it, makes it work. And that's kind of, I think, where DC has like failed in the past. Like with the previous Suicide Squad, it kind of had a weird mix of tones and it wasn't sure where to go. But this movie knew what it wanted. It knew it wanted to be funny and just fun, but also just use that violence and those kind of darker elements to add to that level of fun and make it more enjoyable for the audience.
100%. And I feel like we've recently seen a trend where, especially with The Boys, I don't know if you've seen that TV show.
Yes.
We're seeing superheroes as these darker and grittier characters that I think in past years we failed to really dive deep into their negative emotions as well, because a superhero is a super person. They are just the embodiment of good and heroism. That I think by focusing on such negative characters and having it be so brutal and violent, it's a little bit more realistic when you think of the actual costs of the things that they're doing. When they're killing these people, they're not just falling over and like with no visible injury. They are blowing up, getting ripped to shreds.
Absolutely. Real consequences, real characters. I think it just made that movie that much more enjoyable.
100%.
Awesome. Well, we'll be right back after this.
In the black of night, through blue sky thinking, we thrive in green spaces. Here, we know gray most definitely matters. Even in whiteout conditions, we make things clear and sometimes strike gold. We see the world as it could be. We see the world in color. And at Syracuse University, all we see is orange.
So Tim, when we left off, we were talking about the dark and gritty and realistic nature of the violence in the film. One thing that also stood out to me was how realistic the premise was in terms of international relations. And I think that the movie wasn't afraid to go dark there. So I'd love to hear your opinions about that.
Yeah, so I think I noticed that, on the kind of towards the end of the second act is when it really gets, when they kind of get to the heart of Corto Maltese, the island, and they discover the secret science project that the U.S. Has some secret involvement in. And I think, it was kind of a turnaround, a really quick turnaround for me in that moment, because up until then it was kind of just, all right, a fun group of characters with a lot of violent death and just kind of on a mission. And then they get there to this facility and you find out, oh, the United States is heavily involved in this very unethical and dark kind of experimentation that's going on. And I mean, that's something that a lot of people, kind of talk about in the real world. And it's kind of a thing where like, the United States is involved in a lot of kind of shady operations, both domestic and international. And so it was really interesting, I think, for James Gunn to kind of bring that into his movie that is so, like we were mentioning, so comic book-ish and, just kind of unrealistic and just fun, and have that very grounded and realistic element take such a prominent role in the film. So I thought it was kind of a really nice turnaround, but I really enjoyed it.
100%. I thought it was very interesting that it was set in like a South American location, because with the U.S.'s involvement in South America in the past, we're seeing these new fights for democracy, and I loved seeing that B story of these freedom fighters trying to institute democracy in the country. And I think that a lot of those themes actually were really echoed in just the ensemble itself. With the rats, her father tells her, rats are the most despised creature, but everybody has their purpose. And this idea that if the many work together, you can bring down something huge. And I think that scene of all of the rats climbing onto the alien was really powerful in driving home that message. And I think that's similar to the Suicide Squad. They are what's considered trash. I mean, they're being used on this mission because they're probably going to die, but the government sees it as low risk. If they die, whatever, they die. They're so useless to us. But together, they can come together and do something so powerful. And that was actually a layer of the film I was very surprised to see. And honestly, I think it just really made me feel more connected to the characters and to the world as a whole.
Yeah, I agree, and especially in that third act when they're taking down the giant starfish. That's a weird sentence, but yes, when they're taking down the giant starfish, I think you're right. Like with the Suicide Squad, really nice to kind of see like them coming together and working together as a team, even though they're considered complete, garbage, and they're kind of like very disposable to Amanda Waller. And I think that what's really nice is that yes, you get that team coming together, but also you get a little bit of individuality with each character. Like Polka Dot Man finally kind of at the end realizing that he himself is a superhero and feeling super happy with himself before his abrupt end. I really, really like that moment because it's kind of he's breaking away from his mother and that kind of hold, that emotional and, mental hold she's had over him. And that's a nice individual moment where he becomes his own person. So I like that nice mix of every kind of character getting their own moment, but also the team coming together and, accomplishing a real goal. So I really like that.
I agree. And now I know I'd say the closest Marvel equivalent would be Deadpool with the violence of it. Do you think you see Marvel kind of trying to replicate the success of the new Suicide Squad? Or do you see them sticking to their lane as well?
Great question. I'm not totally sure, honestly. I mean, I hope that kind of Marvel, I've enjoyed their formula so far. I'd like to see them try some new things, but I don't want them to just, replicate what DC's now doing, because, hey, let them have their success. They're going to try it out a little bit, and we'll see if it works. So I don't know. I mean, it would be cool to see what they do, but I like the idea of having two different superhero universes kind of going off in different creative directions.
Definitely. And one thing that also kind of stood out to me was the difference in the fight sequences. I think Marvel uses these giant props, a ship falling from the sky, people running up buildings, everything really big and really crazy. One thing I really loved about the Suicide Squad is, I mean, at the end there was a giant starfish and a building collapsing. But so many of the scenes were these very character-driven fight sequences. And I thought it was really interesting. As you mentioned, each character had their own moment. Each character had their own fighting style as well. Particularly Harley Quinn as she's escaping from her torture situation. I loved that her character was revealed so much in that fight sequence. I don't know if you had another sequence that you had in mind that you really enjoyed.
Yeah, Harley Quinn's was great. Anything with King Shark, honestly, at the end where he kind of came and had a ball going after the starfish. And then I think Bloodsport and Peacemaker's final confrontation at the end was also another big thing for me, because that really showed where their two characters were. Peacemaker kind of his total allegiance to his country, and then Bloodsport, trying to save the individual in front of him. So I think that was a great moment too.
Correct. I thought that was really interesting that they paired the two against each other at the end, because it's introduced as they're pretty much the same. But I mean, I think that kind of goes to show that, I mean, DC's got these deep characters. They've got a lot of dimension to them, and they're not afraid to kill them off. So I'm really excited to see where they go next.
I'm with you there. All right, we'll be right back after this. That's all for this week. If you want to follow more Review Crew content, go to the Review Crew Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, as well as Orange TV Network on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, and YouTube.
Find the Review Q's podcast on Spotify or on our website at orangetvnetwork.syr.edu, where you can also find our blog and more OTN information.
Check out this week's screening, hosted by University Union, Cruella.
See you next week.